any sort of tips on how to like deal with
word
whatever
picture,
it is?
the best word picture I've heard for conflict in a long time is that when you're in a conflict with somebody that you love, I want you to hold a rope and imagine that there is a knot in the middle of it. And when you have a knot and you're both pulling on your side, nothing changes other than you get fatigued. So the approach to a conflict is not to pull on your side harder. It's to put the rope down and say, how can we unwind this? Yeah. And all of a sudden, you've got two people that are looking at the same knot going, well, I saw it like this. I didn't see it like that. And all of a sudden, what was this big conflict clog suddenly becomes a lot easier. So you're going to have to drop the word picture of, I want you to hear my side, like a tug of war.
Well, it's like a win. It's not about winning.
No, let's try to understand each other.
Right.
And so we do that all the time, and that's been super helpful for us. So maybe if you're dealing with a lot of conflict, get yourself a rope and remind yourself not to pull on that thing. I don't need you to feel my side. I need us to understand how we got into this knot. The only way to undo a knot is to sit down and start to pull on
and then
it.
Sometimes having a third party is helpful.
Huge.
Like we've got some friends that have come over many times and been like, hey, we're dealing with this. Can you just help us? Like, because sometimes it just gets too much.
I think it's one of the number one signs of a healthy couple.
I think so too.
Is when they bring an issue to a trusted third party.
Yeah,
Because it shows
it's
that
very
they both
beautiful.
love each other, they're on the journey, and they don't want to make a mistake. An insecure couple keeps their dramas to themselves.
Mm-hmm. I think it's so unhealthy.
It's deadly. It'll kill you.
Yeah.
Great.
And then sometimes maybe you just need to have sex. Is that okay to say?
Yeah, it is okay.
Because I think, I mean, there's times when it's like, sometimes you just need to have sex and then see.
Yes, how mad you really are.
Is that fight really worth it?
Yeah.
Or like, are you really that mad at each other? But yeah, it's true. It's like, just maybe there's another way around it.
Yeah.
So do you have anything to say on that, or is that just me?
It just takes my mind on a rabbit trail that I want to stay on.
I'm sure we'll probably get questions about that.
Right. Well, it's true. So what you
about
just said in summary is sometimes the best way to resolve a conflict is to not resolve it right away and possibly be intimate on the journey. A lot of couples don't subscribe to that. There are people who say it's easy for you to say, but it's mental, and I'm mad, and I'm this, and I get all that. I'm also saying try something different once in a while and just see if it works. And this next question was cool. Who initiates sex in marriage? Good question.
It's a good question.
Do you want to speak to that?
For us, it's been like a... That's great. For us, it's been a bit of both. More you probably than me. There's always usually one in the relationship that is an initiator. Because I've heard it said before, like not everyone is on the same sexual frequency and someone might be feeling this or that. So it's like it can ebb and flow. But for the most part, I think initiating sex it's awkward for me sometimes.
Yeah.
Just because I like to receive, like to know that someone, or to know that you like love me or like me or whatever. I like to know that way. Whereas you like the other way as well. Like you want to know that as well. So I have a hard time of showing that sometimes.
Yeah.
So we had to work really hard at that.
Yeah.
And then you came up with a good idea.
Yeah. I thank you for that. I'll take that win. I see that hand. I think it's important to give context. Like sex could have been a really traumatic, triggering thing we could never overcome because it was a part of my
we're 4 years
failure.
in again. So this is like a side note, disclaimer. This is 4 years in.
Right.
So it's been a journey.
And where we've landed on the initiation part of it, a lot of my need for validation and attention, misguided, you will try to get that from the wrong sources. So I had to be honest about that and start to just get really vulnerable with you. And it was uncomfortable at first. Now it's so comfortable because there's nothing we don't talk about. So it's like, hey, I realized, I need to feel validated, loved, and attractive. I want to feel like you're attracted to me. And so we had those long conversations. And then we came up with this. There's a phrase that I use in my own life. If something is a priority, it will have a plan attached to it. Doesn't have a plan, it's not a priority. Don't call it that. And so if you say sex is a priority in marriage, and it should be, all right, show me your plan. And there might be someone like, oh, you guys have a plan for sex. We're much more natural. Good for you. We've been married for over 2 decades. Okay. We know that if something matters, we got to have a plan. So I did come up with a light sexual activity plan. Certain days, certain times. That way it took all the wonder and the mystery.
It wasn't times. Like,
no,
it wasn't that
specific. I mean, I did
like date night.
Well, there's these times in the week that we're going to plan to have sex.
Yeah.
And that way there's no wondering, there's no resentment, there's no whatever. You can know that, I can know that. And then
and then it's like it gives you a thing of yes or no.
Right.
Like, hey, tonight's like
we scheduled to meet later tonight. Are you going to show up to that? Nah, I'm busy. Okay, cool. But the fact that it's there is fun. And it is fun because it's like, hey, tonight is user's choice night. Are you in or you out? And it's added an element of safety and fun and communication. And I lovingly refer to some of the other nights as your nights off. And you'll laugh and you'll like I'm free. And that hurts a little bit. But you're in bed at 5, with a face mask watching shows. It's like, it's not my night. I'm like, I didn't say it was your night. Relax. But I think it's a good, fun idea to say, all right, because it really did though. No, all jokes aside, take the pressure off.
Took the pressure off, and it just kind of changed it up as well. Like again, 20 years in, you're like, let's change it up.
And I found that plans create more spontaneity than less.
Facts.
So if you think that's going to like hinder you, it's like, nah, what it's doing is it's prioritizing what matters. Anytime you do that, what matters gets brighter. So it's like, hey, our organized sex nights are awesome. Do you want to break out the schedule? You want to just forego the schedule and just do some extra credit homework? But yeah, so that's when it comes to initiation, it is primarily me because we've worked that out. I've also expressed to you that it does feel different.
Well, and I think it takes out some of that like feeling of, especially when you're a mum or a young mum, that feeling of being pulled by another person. Like so. Like there's times in a day when you're just like mum or like you work or whatever's going on, especially, and then you're in pastoral or whatever. Like people always needing you, and then the last thing is like, oh, now I have to have sex with my husband.
Yeah.
And that's a real feeling. And then I think being able to know that, oh, he's hugging me right now. It's not because it's leading to sex.
Because this is my day off, so this hug really matters.
Right. But that's another thing. Like it can be that feeling of like, oh, I'm getting touched now. Like he's going to want whatever. So then having that in clarity and knowing what is really helpful.
Yeah, and I think if people hear this and it doesn't feel natural, that's a symptom of lack of communication.
Yeah.
Because the more you communicate, the more vulnerable you are, the more fun, the more natural that kind of thing becomes. So I found it to be exactly what you said. It frees everything up. And what you said is a huge deal because I have never really understood the weight you carry when it comes to all the things that you do for our family. I never really looked at it like a chore. You never made it feel like that. But I can see how it's like, man, am I going to let my husband down on top of this or whatever? Right. It's like by having some sort of a plan, that's off the table. Because it's like, no, I know you've had a big day. This is the last thing I want you to think about is showing up or performing or being or pleasing me or whatever that is. And it took that pressure off. Yeah. So that's a good, good idea for couples to make.
Yeah, and I think a lot of women feel manipulated into that because then they know if they don't, I'm letting them down. Then we're going to get in a fight, and then it's going to be this. Like then I have to, and just so the men know, like you making her feel bad by manipulating or like starting something, that doesn't help. It's just going to make it worse, and she's going to pull further away. Just side note.
I would also submit that if you're in a marriage that's pretty healthy and you need more sex, I would submit perhaps you need more communication.
Yeah.
Because communication precedes intimacy. There's a lot of guys who are like, I don't get enough sex from my partner. It's like you also haven't talked to her or looked in her eyes or given her anything. So to even think that you can demand or ask that's wild to me. And so again, that's an ownership deal. So it's easy as a husband if you're trying to construct an excuse to be unfaithful or construct an excuse to build some sort of wall between you and your partner where you don't do this for me. the wrong direction.